Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space with the air, like I don't care, baby. By the way, because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news, talking this and that. Well, give me all you got and don't hold it back. Well, I should probably warn you, I'll be just fine. No offense to you, don't waste your time. Here's why. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Hey, go! Bring me down, can't none bring me down. The love is too high to bring me down. Can't none bring me down. I said, bring me down, can't none bring me down. The love is too high to bring me down. Can't none bring me down. I said, because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Hey, go! Bring me down, can't none bring me down. The love is too high to bring me down. Can't none bring me down. I said, because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Hey, hey, hey. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Hey, hey. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Come on.
Hello and good evening, all. I am Lavette Henderson, president of the Diverse Dental Society. I greet you on this marvelous evening on behalf of the Diverse Dental Society Board of Directors that consists of 4 individuals each from the Hispanic Dental Association, the National Dental Association, and the Society of American Indian Dentists. We want you to know that DDS is an added value to you through your membership organization, and know DDS is amplifying your voices of the need of diversity and inclusion and speaking for our community's rights, that oral health is a vital component of overall health. So welcome this evening to our webinar on social media branding. And I would like to give a big, huge thank you to our gracious sponsor, Henry Schein, for tonight's webinar. Next slide. Now to the program. Next on the stage is Dr. Sheila L. Armstrong, our moderator, who is the Diverse Dental Society Board of Directors, is a director, and she's the chair of our educational committee and past president of the National Dental Association. So welcome, Dr. Armstrong. Take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Lavette Henderson. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Diverse Dental Society webinar this evening, Building Your Brand on Social Media. Find, build, and grow your personality and practice. We have the pleasure this evening of having Mr. Tim Vasilakos as our speaker. Tim is the Senior Director of Strategic Business Operations for the Global Dental Group at Henry Schein, and that includes the responsibility for the company's corporate social media team. The team is responsible for integrating and growing social media presence across the company's business groups, which includes dental and medical professionals around the world. Previously, Tim worked for Northwell Health, New York State's largest healthcare provider. He helped to transform traditional public relations into the social media age. He holds an undergraduate degree in communications and public relations from the State University of New York at Oneonta. He also holds a master's degree in media management from the New School. This evening, I would like to encourage you to please interact with us. So if you have questions while Mr. Vasilakos is presenting, please type your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to read your questions during the presentation. We will also have time for questions at the end. I will also be returning after the presentation to give you some instructions on how to obtain your continuing education credit. So again, please help me welcome Mr. Tim Vasilakos. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Armstrong. And let me just share my screen. Hopefully this goes off swimmingly. I think we're all set.
All set, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thank you guys. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the gracious background, Dr. Armstrong. Really happy to be here. So really funny, it hit me today. Actually, one of my coworkers emailed me to my surprise that she happened to know that today was my 8-year anniversary at Henry Schein. So have spent a good amount of time in the dental B2B industry. Before this, I was at, like Dr. Armstrong said, I was at Northwell Health, which is New York State's largest healthcare provider. Funny enough, I'm on here with my colleague, Anne-Marie Gothard, who is one of my closest friends at Henry Schein, and just a really great colleague and friend of mine outside. And her and I actually worked at competing healthcare systems before we joined Henry Schein. So we have a very funny background, even though we didn't know each other before here. We have a very long history even before we joined Henry Schein. Have had the privilege to handle marketing on both ends of the spectrum here. So have had the ability to market direct to patients from a medical and dental standpoint. Northwell covers everything from A to Z. And then joining Henry Schein, I really had the privilege to get to know dentists and doctors better, as Henry Schein obviously markets directly to this profession. It's been a really great 8 years, have learned a ton about the industry, and I'm hoping to share as much as I can with you over the next hour or so. Please, if I could ask for one thing though, ask as many questions as you want. I told Dr. Armstrong, please pepper me, stop me, interrupt me. If this was in a real room setting, I would be able to read body language. I would be able to read, see people raising their hands and how people are reacting to things. 2.5 years into the pandemic, I'm still not used to doing this at a completely, in my basement by myself with my dogs at my feet. So it's definitely a little bit different. Please interrupt me. I'd love to discuss the things that are important to you. This is a very high-level overview of social media. What I've felt has been important with dentists and doctors that I've talked to over the years. Everyone's going to have a different perspective on this, and I'd love to hear what's important to you, as it really helps shape the way that we speak to you all. So with that, I'll dive right into it. And like I said, please ask as many questions as you want. just in terms of what we're going to go over tonight, really, really high level. But I would love it if everyone walked out of here tonight and was able to say, you have a better understanding of how you could establish yourself on social media. And for those of you that are on social media personally, you probably have a good understanding of what this looks like to begin with. But hopefully you come out of it a little bit better understanding how this could relate for you and your business, for your profession. So one, if we could identify the right social media that's right for you and your audience, that would be fantastic. And then two, obviously, if you create that audience, you need to create content that fuels it, right? I every time I talk to a business leader in our company, and keep in mind Shine works in 32, 34 countries, and every language, every culture. The one thing that I always say when different companies within Shine are wanting to jump into social media is you have to think of it very similar to as you would your own personal social media. And that is, we can't create the page and assume that if you build it, they will come. If you had your own Facebook page and you invited all your friends and family to join you, follow you, friend you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it may be, and you never posted or said anything, there wouldn't be much value to it for anyone. Wouldn't be much value to it for yourself. There wouldn't be very much value to it for the people who follow you. And that's very similar to how you have to think about this when you're thinking about it from your personal brand perspective, from your practice perspective, that just starting a page is not enough. Your patients won't follow you just because. That might have been the case 10, 15 years ago when social media wasn't proliferated to every brand, to every organization out there. It was actually that way when Dr. Armstrong mentioned that I joined Northwell. It was back in 2008 before brands really had social media. So to say I had it a little bit easier back then is an understatement, because Northwell created social media, and basically anyone who was a patient or anyone that recognized Northwell's brand wanted to follow it. Today, I'm sure that for many of you on social media, you follow hundreds of brands on social. I mean, if I look at my own personal social media, probably 2/3 of it aren't people that I actually know in real life. They're celebrities, they're brands, they're people that are, personal political figures or public figures. So it's really important to think that when you're creating social media, it is not something that you could just create and walk away from. There needs to be ownership of it. And then thirdly, of course, is just like you would your business, right? Measuring it, understanding what's working, adapting and changing and moving forward, making sure that you're not just forcing something, that you're not just doing something to have a step and repeat, that you're not just doing something for the sake of it. You're measuring it, making sure that it has a good impact on you, your personal brand, what you find to be fulfilling. And also it brings value to the patients that are coming into your doors every day. So if we can knock out those three things today, I'd be really, really happy. And I hope you will be too. So there's no way to start this without level setting. And without a doubt, this is always something I end up spending a lot of time with the various groups that I speak to, because I don't think everyone really understands what the social landscape looks like from A to Z. This is probably the most condensed way I could put it. So forgive me if we breeze through what is really a lot of information in one slide, but I want to make it so it's something that you could take, you could screenshot. Maybe it's even something that you could just print out and keep on your desk to understand, hey, where should my practice, where should I be on from a social media standpoint? So very easy. Facebook is still home base, and that's what I like to call it. Facebook is very much home base. It's the start and finish of social media. No matter what, yes, people come, people go. The demographic has changed certainly over the last 5 to 10 years, but it's still the most used social media platform across the world, and it's not close. You have almost 70% of internet using adults having a profile. That is a ton. Think of what I mean by internet using adults. That basically is anyone who owns any type of smartphone, computer, whatnot. 7 out of 10 have a Facebook profile. You're not going to find anything that has a higher proliferation of people on a social media platform. It's even higher for the female demographic. A lot of people really gravitate towards this, especially for discourse. You have Facebook groups, which is honestly what and we'll go into this a little bit more later on, what I gravitate to for Facebook is specific groups, which I've seen tons of dental groups grow and spread over the last couple of years, because it's a lot of groups like this wanting to get together, have a private group, have private discussions. For all the hobbies in my life, running, collectibles, I'm in all these private groups, which have grown and grown and grown over the last year as Facebook has kind of changed their strategy. Second, obviously, is Twitter, right? I mean, man, can we go 24 hours without Twitter being in the news for something? It's obviously a headline for who's buying it and what's going on with that. Funny enough, Twitter isn't particularly strong for, I would say, the dental space. The reason we use it at Henry Schein is actually probably closer to the reason why Anne Marie and I would use it. And that is, it's really strong for media, right? Obviously, anyone who's on Twitter, I'm sure one of the reasons you find it valuable is you find your news sources on there, you find the people that are important to you in terms of public figure, that's who you find on there. But in terms of individual dentist, individual medical practitioner, it's not the strongest platform. So if you're looking to have discourse with other dentists and doctors, I wouldn't start there, but I just wanted to level set you as this is a fantastic place to find education, to follow your dental trades, to follow all those topics that you care about.
So Tim, I have a question.
Please.
Do you have an age demographic for Facebook?
So I could give off the top of my head, and I could answer this after the fact, Sheila. Let me do some research. I'll tell you the Schein demographic. It has greatly changed over the last 8 years that I've been with Schein. When I first joined Schein, I would say our Facebook following, of which is, if not close to six figures, if not six figures, close to six figures in US alone, was very much weighted to people in their late 20s to late 30s. Now it's, I mean, and granted, it's been 8 years, it's shifted to people in their 40s and 50s. So we've definitely seen the demographic shift. And when I dive into Instagram and TikTok later, I think that's the easy answer as to where people are shifting. But from a standpoint of how we see dentists and healthcare practitioners in general, it definitely has skewed to the people that are well established in their profession. It certainly isn't as popular with 18 to 22-year-olds as it was when I was in college. Funny enough, Facebook came out my first semester of college, so I was one of the people that joined it in 2004, and it literally was just my picture and some scribbles on a wall. So I've seen it greatly change over the last 18 years, which is scary to say out loud. But yeah, Dr. Armstrong, it's definitely changed a lot, and it certainly has skewed from 20s and 30s to the last 10 years to really pushing towards the 40 to 60 year age range.
Right. So one of our participants has a question.
Oh, please.
Kara Young says, what is the best way to measure Instagram, Facebook, and Google My Business? Also, what are acceptable values to achieve from the platforms mentioned above? So I don't know if you want to go a little further and then come back to that.
So I will answer that later, Dr. Armstrong,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Okay.
That's certainly in there. And if I get through this, I promise I will address those questions. But I really
we'll circle
appreciate
back.
you asking.
Thank you.
Awesome. So that covers Twitter, LinkedIn, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory to say LinkedIn is obviously you're the professional platform, right? I'm sure many of you have one for you as a professional, maybe not your practice, maybe not where you work, but I've certainly had LinkedIn for years. It is, it is your essentially digital resume, but it is so much more than that. We are finding that more and more dentists are using it every day. 5-10 years ago, it was almost a completely useless platform for us in terms of speaking to dentists. It was really great for recruiting people to Henry Schein. Every day that passes, we're seeing more dentists engage with us on here, which screams to us that dentists are finding value in speaking to other dentists in a professional setting. Keep in mind, LinkedIn will always be the more civil platform. It is people's professions. It is people's livelihood. Things won't get as out of hand on LinkedIn as it will on Twitter and Facebook. And you'll see a lot of really great discourse between dentists on here. So I definitely implore you to spend some time here. For YouTube, nothing that should be shocking here. Pretty much everyone in the world that uses the computer, uses a smartphone, uses YouTube. The reason I wanted to put it on here is because, technically it is a social media. It is actually, from a dental standpoint, something for Henry Schein that has incredibly blown up since the pandemic. And a lot of this is due to when everyone was in lockdown, people were sitting at home Googling how to do dental procedures, how to do things differently. We had endless dentists say, hey, we want more education, we want more of this, we want more background on this. And it really became a channel where we saw more and more dentists share their thoughts or ask us for information. So it is really interesting to see that change. Going into what I was discussing earlier about Instagram, and I would put Instagram and Snapchat on here because when I was researching it, Instagram and Snapchat have really similar demographics. And it's not surprising because, in all honesty, if anyone that's used Instagram over the years and used Snapchat over the years, Instagram has all but stolen a lot of Snapchat's capabilities. So for here, extremely popular in what is, I would say, the youngest millennials and oldest Gen Zers, right? So you have everyone that is basically first getting a phone, first getting on social media, asking their parents, it's the first thing they do is download Instagram and Snapchat. Not as surprising here. When I take a look at who's on Instagram and following us from a dental perspective, it is all the young dentists. I mean, every young dentist is on this platform, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit, but every young dentist is sharing every single thing they do every day in dental school. They're sharing every single thing they do every day when they first get out of school. They have a lot of pride, obviously, in their profession, and they're sharing it and they're showing it off a ton. It's really interesting to see and follow, but it is a lot of information.
So Tim, here's
Yep.
another question.
Oh, please.
Can a dental organization utilize LinkedIn?
So as in like a practice?
They just said organization. So like maybe like the NDA or HDA or SED.
sure. For sure. And what I would say to that is, it is from a society perspective, from an organization perspective, it's a fantastic way to gain membership and create a community. There are LinkedIn groups. There are certainly ways that you could create a community of people on LinkedIn, and it's going to be very professional. If you're talking about from a practice perspective, I would argue it'd probably be the first thing that I do. And that is, why I would say that is, to me, I've always been a proponent of saying you have to win in the workplace before you win in the marketplace. And that means you have to win over your team. You have to win over the people that you work with. You have to have a great culture internally before you could market a great culture externally. LinkedIn is that, right? LinkedIn is where you build your your organization's culture. For Shine, it's one of our most powerful tools. We have well over 6 figures of people following us, current employees, past employees, potential employees. So it is the place where you want to show off who your team is and why it's important to join you.
Another question for YouTube, what's the best way to market a pediatric dental practice?
So I don't know if I have a perfect answer to that, but I think I will get into the specifics or I will get into the basics in a little bit, Dr. Armstrong, about how to run ads. And it will certainly touch upon that. Okay. I'm by no means am I an expert in pediatric dentistry, but in terms of marketing your practice, I definitely will talk about that in a little bit. And I'm hoping that the insight will be a great start. I just would love to reiterate too, if there are specific questions about tactics that I'm not going to be able to get to in the next hour for sure, please reach out to me afterwards. I'm happy to have one-on-one back and forth of things that you could do to help lift your practice. It's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Okay, thanks.
So that's Instagram and Snapchat. You will find, and I'll share some shocking numbers on the next slide as to how much this conversation, especially on Instagram, has grown over the last couple of years. For Pinterest, really interesting. I don't know if it comes to a surprise here, but it is very weighted to the female demographic. It is so my story with Pinterest is, I swear that everyone that is about to get engaged or about to be a fiance has a Pinterest that the man in the relationship doesn't know about, or the partner in the relationship doesn't know about, because the moment I proposed to my wife, she broke out a Pinterest board that I've never seen before, and we had our whole wedding planned. So I promise it's one of those things that it is incredibly useful, especially with organization. From a dental perspective, what I've seen over the last 8 to 10 years is people don't use it broadly. They do use it for specific reasons. And one of those reasons is to show off their practice in terms of aesthetics, in terms of look and feel. not much different than you would use Pinterest to decorate your house. Some doctors like to use it to show off and get inspiration or pinspiration as to how they're growing or how they're building out and decorating their practice. I've seen a whole lot of rustic barn doors in dental practices over the last couple of years, and I can't help that between reality television and Pinterest, it's the reason why. And then diving into TikTok, I'm sure everyone has heard how much this has blown up. You know, it's funny, I used this slide last year and it was the #1 downloaded app of 2020. And then I just confirmed that it was indeed the #1 downloaded app of 2021. And I looked at the top 3 most downloaded apps, and I believe TikTok was downloaded 685 million times. And to give you an idea of how much that was, the second most downloaded thing was a game, Among Us, which, by the way, if you've never played Among Us, is pretty fun, was downloaded 200 million times, right? That is a big gap. That is a huge gap. So TikTok is certainly something that is growing. It's actually not something that Shine uses outwardly as the Henry Schein just yet, because for us, TikTok is more about dentists talking to other dentists. We would rather enable that than try to use it right now as a marketing tool. But it is certainly something that we look at all the time to see what dentists are talking about and try to inject ourselves in that conversation. Really interesting. And for sure, if you guys have interest, there's tons and tons of doctors, dentists on there that are really doing fun things. So going into the next slide, I want to show you what I was talking about with Instagram. And I just added the slide a couple of minutes before, and I forgot to add it before, but it is such an incredible number. And that is, this is what happens when you type in dentistry into Instagram, right? It's not like anyone ever said, hey, hashtag dentist is the official thing we're going to use, but people obviously use hashtags. And these are some of the common dental hashtags that are used. Obviously, some are in different countries. But to say that this is a recent usage of the hashtag dentist with over 12 million uses, right? So when I'm saying that dentists all over are sharing what they're doing, it's not an understatement. This is recent posts. This isn't forever, right? This is the conversation that's going on right now. So I definitely want everyone to keep that in mind, that if you're questioning, hey, should I be on here? Hey, are my peers on here? Hey, are my patients on here? I promise that majority of them are. And do me a favor, go in, if you're not familiar with Instagram, I'm happy to walk you through it. If you are, just go into the search bar later tonight, later tomorrow, look up hashtag dentist, look up hashtag dental life. A lot of the ones that are up here are just commonly used dental hashtags that are popular by both patients and dentists. You will see some really inspirational posts of things that you could be copying, mirroring, taking advantage of within your own brand, within your own practice. I spend hours in here just seeing what dentists are talking about. It's incredible. And the craziest part about this is these are only the public posts, right? So there are hundreds of millions of people that have private profiles that you would never find what their posts are, and it wouldn't be accounted for here. So this is just people sharing public posts, which tells you how immense this conversation is across the dental profession. So please spend some time here. I promise you'll have some fun with it. I'm going to show you some examples of what dentists are talking about, but please, this is not doing it justice. This is why I really wanted to show this slide. So diving into what we looked at in terms of the agenda. When you're thinking of content creation, right? So we just talked about what platform is right for you. That is on you to spend some time and say, this is what I want to be on. And I would say the most important thing when picking your platform is just that. Pick your platform. Start with one. Make sure that you could handle one. Make sure it's even right for you. What I see so often, and my dentist, who I'm 99.99% sure is not in this evening's discussion. What I saw with my dentist years ago drove me nuts, and I did talk to him about it. And that is, when I first moved to Long Island for Henry Schein, I'm from Brooklyn. When I first moved to Long Island for Henry Schein, I needed a new dentist. I was not going to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours every time I wanted to go to the dentist, and I go often. And I found out from a family friend, hey, go to Dr. So-and-so. He great dentist. Our family's been going to him for years. Just took over from his father. First thing I did was Google him, obviously, and what pops up is his Instagram, his Facebook, his Twitter page. Click them all. Nothing posted in years. Looked like he was out of business. If it weren't for the family referral from literally my best friends in life, I would have never gone to him. And when I went to him, I said, hey, I looked up your Facebook profile. You haven't posted anything in 4 years. And same thing with your Twitter and your Instagram account. And it was one of those things that he created and he walked away from, never used it as a marketing or communications tool. But it really made him look like he either A, was out of business, or B, just didn't care about keeping a lifeline or communication with his patients. And that's the first thing that popped up on his Google search. So
Tim,
yep.
Quick question. You said, find the platform that works best for you.
Yep.
Do you mean the one that you're most familiar with? Or
No.
How do you make that selection?
Yep. So I would say it's one of two things, Dr. Armstrong. One is, of course, you want to be familiar with it and you want to be comfortable with it. But if your patients aren't on there, or the people that are important to you aren't out there, it doesn't mean anything, right? There have been plenty of times where various business people across Shine say, hey, we really need to be on X, or we really need to be on this platform. And then our team does due diligence to say, hey, are our customers actually on here, before we spend time and effort to do that? So the first thing is, yes, of course, you want to be comfortable using the platform, but if your patients aren't on there, you have to think about, or the people in your organization aren't on there, you have to think about, is this worth my time? Are people actually on here? Which is why I'm helping gravitate to say, here are the actual numbers for the platforms. You'll be able to understand, hey, are my patients on X? Are my patients on Y? No matter what, from a patient standpoint, Instagram and Facebook will be the top two every time in terms of speaking to patients for the next couple of years at the very least. And it's what it's been for the last 10 to 15 years. If you're not comfortable using one or two though, and you don't want to get comfortable, I would say you shouldn't force it, right? You should do what's comfortable for you. And if it's not something that's particularly important to you, hopefully it's something that someone in your practice could handle. One thing I want to talk about later is making sure that you find a champion within your office. If that's not you as a doctor, if it's not you as the office manager, hopefully there's someone within your office that it can be, because someone needs to own this. It would be the same thing as if Henry Schein didn't have a social media team, but we had a whole bunch of social media pages and nobody actually owned it. So I would say it's one of those two things, Dr. Armstrong. So when you are picking your platform though, right? So say you got to the point where you say, okay, I really want to spend time marketing to my patients and my potential patients on Facebook and Instagram. After that, you have to define, well, what do you want to be, right? How are you going to create content as an office? How are you going to create content as an organization? And this is very much similar to how you would create any other marketing strategy. You're not just building a channel and walking away from it. Making sure that you define what's important to you is step one, right? Do you want to get more patients in the doors? Do you want to have more long-lasting conversations with your patients in between visits? Do you want to increase the brand awareness of your office and your community and your extended community? It's really important to start with that goal as if you would start any other goal if you were opening your practice. And then the next is defining your audience, right? Who are the people that you want to actually speak to? And I'll dive into a couple more ways that you could actually find your audience on social media using advertising. But in terms of who's important to you, is it moms of children? Is it young adults coming out of college that are now looking for a dentist? Understanding and saying, here are the patients, here are the people that I'm trying to speak to, is a critical step in actually creating these platforms, because otherwise you're trying to speak to everyone and be everything to everyone, of which you are nothing to no one. And it's something that it's as simple as that, but in all honesty, if you don't have a personality that speaks to a specific group or a handful of groups, you try to be too much to everyone, and it almost makes it so it's so broad that it means nothing to anybody. And then third would be analyzing what you're actually producing, analyzing what you're posting. We'll touch upon this in a little bit, but social media metrics, for anyone that uses social, for anyone that's used it for business, there are endless business metrics to measure. I will dive into this later. Engagement will always be number one to me. It is the absolute currency. It's basically, hey, if you post something, did people care? That is always step one. but making sure that you take time to analyze, say, hey, this is what my patients cared about. This is what my members cared about. And saying, let's do more of this is really important, because if not, you just keep doing what you think is important and you will lose followers, you will lose ears and eyes. And then obviously the step and repeat here is creating good content. And that's a lot easier said than done, which is why I mentioned having a social media champion within your office, someone that's walking in the doors every day, that thinking, hey, how are we creating content that speaks to our patients, speaks to our community, is really important. Because without that, everyone's really busy in the office. I've been in a lot of dental offices. I've been in a lot of organization meetings. Everyone has more than enough work to do. If this isn't on someone's agenda every day, it will fall to the side. So as I mentioned, honestly, these are three of my more favorite people that I've met over the last couple of years at Henry Schein. Anne-Marie and I have had the great joy in spending time with current American Student Dental Association presidents. These are some of the immediate past presidents. But when I take a look at this, there is no question. They all are digital natives. And that's why I put tomorrow's dentist, maybe today's dentist, all digital natives. It wasn't a question, did they have social media? And it wasn't a question, if you look at their profile, do they share absolutely everything they do on social media? And the answer is yes. I mean, when you look at dental students, do the search that I talked about earlier, look up #dental-student, you will see thousands of dental students sharing every single thing they're doing in their life. It's not any different for these young leaders. And if you take a look, they're just really excited to share what's important to them and what's meaningful to them. They're speaking to each other. They're growing insanely large followings. I mean, some of these, Dr. Solomon has grown a ton of, he's an oral surgeon. Some of the young dentists that we work with, and I'm talking dentists that are late 20s, early 30s, just getting established in their life, have hundreds of thousands of followers because they're speaking, in ways that patients understand. They're also speaking in ways that young dentists and young doctors understand. It's really interesting to see. I implore you to follow all three of these young individuals. They're really great people. They're inspiring. We've gotten to work with them and just really three great people to draw some inspiration from. But this to me answers the question of, one, incredibly diverse backgrounds, right? Diverse in almost every way possible. And they all have different goals. They all have different trajectories in life, but they all understand the power of social. They all understand the power of their brand. And I would say a lot of their success and ways that they branded themselves have helped establish their futures on social, helped establish their futures because of who they are on social media. A lot of the ways we've gotten in touch with these people have been through social media. We never would have been able to do that before this. And can't tell you how much importance that draws to your personal brand, your office's personal brand. But seriously, follow them, they're great. Really, really, really great people. So I'm just going to run through some examples of how creating some engaging content in your offices could be as simple as posting what you're doing. When I'm taking a look at some of the things that our team has done over the last recent years in terms of how we're engaging for this instance, how we're increasing student engagement, right? We want to make sure that we're talking to these dental students. These dental students really are not our customers until 4 to 7 years after they graduate. So it's really important that we build some type of relationship with them now. And if you see what we're doing isn't anything insanely grand. We're just helping them get their own platform. So for here, this would be the for you guys, the mirror of sharing some of your patient stories, sharing what some of the people that walk into your door do. For this is us reaching out to dental students saying, hey, we saw your story. We'd love to feature it on Henry Schein Dental's platform, something that speaks to a whole bunch of your peers, and they love it. And obviously we see great engagement rates because of this. This is something that is what's called UGC, user generated content, right? Outside of the post on the bottom right, which my team did create. This is content that is created by people that we're seeing across social media, and we're asking for their permission to reuse it. And luckily we're getting a yes. For you, this is the difference of, patients walking in the door, you having a great case and you asking them, hey, are you comfortable with me? Obviously we have to follow HIPAA, right? But are you happy with sharing some of the, some of the ways that your case went, or some of your happiness with our office? Luckily, my dentist does that now too. I've helped him set that up where he gets to share his patient stories every day. And it's something that is infectious, right? It is something that makes other people see what you're doing, says, hey, I want that too. It's within my community. It is something that is so fun. And having someone in the office that gets to own this and be the marketer of the group is really exhilarating. So just wanted to share this as an example of what we're doing with dental students and younger dentists. In terms of using some of the different ways that Instagram is used, and this is just a tactic within it, is what's really grown over the last couple of years is short videos, what would be called an Instagram reel, sharing things that aren't particularly well produced, but they're fun. They're very authentic and real. For this, it's a lot of engaging customers in ways that they're just speaking to each other and taking the time to say, hey, we think that this is important to you. This is what you've been talking about. Reusing a lot of this, creating content of things that we know are already out there and being engaged. It's a really easy way to say UGC, what I mentioned in terms of user-generated content, is a really easy way to say this is going to become part of my content strategy. We are going to use some of our own patient stories, some of our own stories of our staff and whatnot to create some of our content. And people love to see that. And one of the easiest things that we found to do is ask questions. You'd be surprised. We'll go out there and ask, hey, which waiting room do you like better, or which operatory room do you like better? We'll get insane amounts of people replying, and I mean, maybe sometimes having arguments of which is better, which is worse. And we've made kind of a game out of it to say, hey, let's design things based off of what our audience likes. Hey, let's do this, let's do that. Very easy to create polls, very easy to create questions within Instagram, within Facebook, of asking your patients what's important to them, maybe posting different photos of different things that are important to them. There are endless tools to use that you could take and apply to the way you're marketing your practice now. Could spend all day talking about the different things, and like I said, more than happy to talk through any of this with anyone after the fact, of specific things that we could use to market either your personal brand or your practice. And now here is where we dive into what I mentioned in terms of analysis. So obviously having a social media page, being active on it is really important. Listening is really important, right? So if people are saying things to you, toward you, about your practice, about your brand, about who you are, if you're a doctor that has a prominent following, if you're a doctor that you're mentioned across the internet, you're mentioned across social media, making sure that you're actually listening to what people are saying and replying and following up when it's directed towards you is really important. The reason I flag this is because this is probably not something that you need day one or even day two of starting your social media for your practice. But when you do get to the point where this becomes part of your real marketing and communication strategy, getting a listening tool, getting a social media tool is going to be really important for both your effectiveness and your efficiency. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had this within here. There are a handful of platforms that I highlighted here that are both really cheap, especially from a small business standpoint, and really easy to use if you want to have a tool that manages everything being said about you. If you want to have a tool that manages all the things that you post on social media, especially if you have multiple accounts between personal, between professional, you don't want to have to jump around from platform to platform to do that. These two tools would handle it for you, and they're really cost effective. They work for both small business, and they have obviously enterprise accounts for larger businesses. But I wanted to make sure that you guys understood how important this is, because obviously social media is just that, and I'm just giving you an example here of how we monitor how Henry Schein is mentioned, right? So obviously we're a large company, global Fortune 300 company. We're mentioned a lot, and thank God we're mentioned very much, mostly in a good light. But it's important to know that, hey, if you have a growing practice, people are going to talk about you, and even if you don't have social media, people are likely talking about you anyway, right? Especially if you're, a popular practice within the community. I'm sure people are leaving reviews. I'm sure people are writing about their experiences on social media. Having a social media monitoring tool, which is what I shared with you on the previous page, would make sure that you keep an eye out on everything public being said about you in your practice. You'd be able to put in all the keywords that are important to you. You could put in staff names. You could put in, obviously the practice owner, the doctor's name, your practice's name. Make sure that you understand that, hey, if something's said publicly, and now granted, a lot of things are said privately, especially on Facebook, that you'll be able to see it. It's really important. It helps you with your marketing, with your branding, helps you understand how your patients feel. Not every single thing said about you will come in the form of a Google review where you'll get an alert and you'll see it. People will share things on social media that you might not see, and it's really important that you keep a pulse on that.
So does this come like a weekly report, or how is it generated?
It comes however you want it, Dr. Armstrong. So you can make it hourly if you want. If you're that popular, you can make it however you want. We do it in daily. For someone that has a small to medium sized business, you would not need to see a report more than once or twice a week at the very most. For you, for a small business especially, this is probably peace of mind to make sure that you're seeing what's being said about your office, your practice, your organization. If you're an organization, such as any of the dental organizations, you probably want to have this because you want to see what's being said about your society, your organization. But from a business standpoint, it certainly helps to have a home base that isn't Facebook, that isn't Instagram, that you're able to plug in all the different social tools and have in one place so you could see everything in one spot rather than having to say, okay, me, Tim Vasilakos, I'm signing out of Facebook. I'm going to sign back in as my dental practice and I'm going to search everything. You would see everything. You'd see you'd see all the advertisements you're running in one place. You'd see everything being said about you in one place, and you'd be able to publish from right here. So from an efficiency tool, that's why this is really important. And it also gives you the peace of mind that there is one place where you have everything for your brand. And like I said, really, really cheap, especially when you're talking from a single business perspective. So this is probably one of the more exciting things in the dental space that I would say I've seen over the last 2 to 3 years. And that is dental Facebook groups. I'm sure if anyone here uses Facebook often, you're part of at least 1 or 2 dental Facebook groups. I must be part of. I mean, between Anne-Marie and I, we often joke about what we see in the dental Facebook groups, but I must be part of like 10. And as someone that's not a clinician, and I still get, have to close one eye when I see too much blood. I open my Facebook and I see nothing but dental cases and cases that dentists are sharing with each other. In terms of professional development for a dentist, this is where I would start today if I was a young dentist, if I was a dentist that wanted to know what other dentists are doing. Because you could look up, there's one that gravitates towards my heart just because I've worked with them in the past. It's called Dental Nachos. It's got at least tens of thousands of followers within it. It's a Dr. Paul Goodman. I believe he's in Philadelphia. He's got an incredibly large following in this group, not necessarily as a doctor, but he's created this group of dentists that just want to talk about certain things in their practice and how to answer questions, how to handle cases, how to handle some patients, right? It's incredible the conversations being had, and it's private, right? So at least that this group and many dental groups like it, they're vetted. People make sure that you're in the dental industry. You're not going to have, your patients aren't going to be accepted in the group. It's going to be a lot of you and your peers having closed and private conversations with each other. And you see some candid conversations. And I promise you, over the course of COVID, especially in the rough days of March to July of 2020, there were some really tough conversations happening in there, when things were in lockdown. And it's really important to get that perspective of your peer. And Facebook groups, if I was a practicing dentist, would be the place I probably spend my time first before I ever start external social media, before I ever start branding myself, because it helps you get a pulse as to what other dentists are doing. So I highly implore you to join some of these groups. You could literally go on Facebook. If you don't use Facebook, I promise I almost don't use Facebook for anything except for using groups. It's really where I find the value. I really don't need to know what the guy I took English class with 20 years ago is doing. It is more about understanding what things that are important to me and being part of these niche groups. Do it today. I mean, do it right after this. Join some dental groups, see what people are talking about. There are plenty of societies that have groups, but join ones that, that are just general basic dental groups. You will find there to be a lot of value. There'll probably be some things that you want to bump your head to because people do things differently, but it's really fun. Dr. Armstrong, do you have a question?
Tim, this is Lavette. I do have a question for you.
Oh, please.
So when you mentioned that you can share other dentist posts,
Yep.
is there, and you ask for permission, is that a document that needs to be used? You just ask them through their social media page? What is the safest way if you're going to repost someone else's post?
Sure. So I'll say, one, I'm not a lawyer, right? So I will totally raise my hand and say that. But from a general practice and standpoint, and this is something we've conferred with dozens of other Fortune 500 companies, it's the simple, hey, just getting confirmation, whether it's through a private message saying, hey, Lavette, we saw you posted this. It talks about a topic that is important to us, or it talks about something that's related to Henry Schein or related to my practice. Do you mind if we reuse it on our social media page? 99, I don't think we've ever said, I don't think anyone's ever told us no. If someone's posting on social media, they want the exposure. So asking someone publicly, easiest way to get that started. A little bit different if you're going to talk about patient stuff. If you're talking about sharing a patient story, your office should definitely create a HIPAA form of which you have the patient sign off from. So, I'll speak for Anne-Marie. So Anne-Marie and I come from the hospital system field. I always had HIPAA forms in my cars. I think I always had HIPAA forms in my back pocket at all times. Whenever we were talking about a patient story, it is, make sure that you get the patient sign off before you talk about anything on social media. I'm certainly not an expert on this in terms of how a dental practice does it, but there's plenty of resources online in terms of patient release for, for communications and marketing. It's not hard. It's a simple sign off from that, hey, you're okay to use my likeness and my story on your social media.
And I just wanted to say, Tim, about the private groups.
Yeah.
I may be guilty of being a lurker, but I am in a few private groups,
There
and
you
you
go.
do get a lot of information. So those are definitely good groups to join.
So my background, my undergrad is in PR and marketing, as is my master's is in media. I am fairly confident I could do a easy ortho case after being after being in all these groups.
Okay.
Give me a very easy aligner case. I'm pretty confident I could scan and get that case submitted. I promise though, yes, exactly. You guys will learn so much spending time in this group from everything A to Z. I see how to handle difficult patients, or people will come in, you'll see them, they'll be frustrated. A patient came in with this, you'll get a lot of affirmation, you'll get a lot of ways to help you get through it. So it's really important. It builds that sense of community. From a Schein perspective, you'll see that we monitor groups best we can. We don't join groups that are meant for dentists and not meant to include industry professionals. So when we see people that are either praising or complaining us, we make sure that it's always public. If we're joining a private dental group, we always ask the admins, hey, are you okay if industry people come in? If it's a private dental group that's always supposed to be for dentists, we want it to be that way. We don't want that trust to be broken. But I promise this is worth everyone's time. It might take time, like Dr. Armstrong said, she's in a handful of groups. I'm sure some of them are better than others. You will find incredible value in it. So going into what I mentioned earlier, and that is engagement and your success factors for what social media is for you. Engagement is basically, if I were to say in business terms, look at engagement as your bottom line revenue. Engagement is your audience saying, we care about what you're saying, we care about the stories you're sharing, and that what you're spending time on social media is useful to us. don't have all the time in the world today to dive into how the algorithms work, because it's incredibly different on every platform. But from a general standpoint, if you have 500 followers, if your practice has 500 followers on Facebook and you post something, 500 people aren't seeing it. You're lucky if 10% see it. If 50 people see it, you're doing a good thing. It's just the way it works. If you post something on social media, if you have 1,000 followers, if you have 500 Facebook friends, they're not all seeing what you posted. The algorithm rewards people who engage with content. So you might notice that, hey, me and Dr. Armstrong are friends. I constantly like and comment on things she posts. Well, it's no surprise that I'm going to continuously see what she likes, what she posts, because Facebook says, or Instagram says, hey, Tim really likes what Dr. Armstrong posts. Keep showing him what she posts. Same thing here, right? The reason why engagement is so important is because it signals to the platform that, hey, this is what your patients cared about. And if you keep doing this and your patients keep caring, we're going to keep showing it to them, because guess what? It keeps them on the platform, keeps our revenue coming in from a social media platform standpoint, and it keeps people engaged, right? So that's why engagement is such an important tool. It could sound almost innocuous or just something that is so vain, but it's not. And I hate to say it, but my sister is a social media influencer, and I use that in quotes because I'll never actually say that to her face. But she's a personal trainer down in Miami, and she's built her whole business off of her Instagram. And it's not something where she's hawking product. She's not hawking protein bars and fit tea. She is speaking to her clients in terms of, here are the best ways to work out. Here are the best ways to do this exercise and that exercise. She doesn't have the largest following in the world, but she has some of the most engaged followers I've ever seen in my life. People tend to get enamored with numbers, right? You want to have 1 million followers. You want to have tens of millions of followers. Obviously, you look at some of celebrities and you say, wow, I wish I could have that. I promise you that there are more successful dentists that have engaged 200 followers on Facebook than there are dentists that have 20,000 followers that don't particularly care what they say. The problem is people build up their audiences, they fight and they scratch and they say, hey, I want to reach X amount of followers. But guess what? If you're not engaging those people, I wouldn't say you don't need to do it daily, but I would just say continuously and consistently, then they're never going to see your content. So I would focus on building audiences that are meaningful rather than building the largest audiences. And for Anne Marie and I, that's a very hard thing to do when you work for a company that is run by accountants, that is run by finance people that say, we always want to see the number get bigger. But our argument is, hey, we would rather get in the New York Times once than get into smaller magazines 100 times. I'd rather have 200 dentists that really are engaged with content than 200,000 dentists that saw it passively and moved on. So keep that in mind, that quality versus quantity should be tattooed into your mind when you're doing this, that you really would prefer to have the engaged people than just grow your audience. And also keep in mind, you will be penalized by social if you're not engaging your audience, right? So similar to what I said with Dr. Armstrong, if I'm constantly liking and commenting, or at least spending time looking, right? So even if you don't like or comment, Facebook knows if you stopped and read something, Instagram knows. If they could recognize and say, hey, everything she posts, no one really cares about, they're going to continue to ding Dr. Armstrong because she's not posting anything engaging. And she might have 50,000 followers. 5 people might see something. And it really shows you how important this engagement factor is to your social media life. Really easy. And this is actually one of the easiest things to understand is engagement rate. How do you create this rate? If you use any of the tools that I mentioned to you earlier, it will always give you your engagement rate for your platforms. And in fact, if you dive into Facebook analytics, Twitter analytics, Instagram analytics, they'll always tell you what your engagement rate is. But for you to understand, engagement rate is really simple. It's total engagement. So if you post something, how many engagements did it get? Divided by impressions, right? So engagements is how many people liked or clicked or commented, divided by impressions, which is the amount of people that saw something, right? So If 10 people saw it, divided by the 5 people that engaged with it, times 100, that is the engagement rate. It'll always be a percentage. Usually it's a percentage between 1 and 10%. If you're getting engagement rates that are higher than that, you're doing better than we are, and you're doing a really good job. There will be plenty of really popular dentists that continuously have incredibly high engagement rates because they build a very strong following. You'll see a lot of these dentists that I would consider influencer, if not celebrity dentists, just have ridiculous engagement on each post because they build a following that is not only loyal, but they find value in what they're saying. But that doesn't come without taking the time to create meaningful content, which is why I said having that champion in the office is the number one thing.
So Tim, then should we ask our patients to, like our posts?
So I wouldn't phrase it like that, right? If I was asked by my dentist, hey, can you like my post? I definitely would be, well, I'm also a critical cynical marketer, right? So I would say, Dr. So-and-so, are you crazy? But I definitely would make a call to action in your office to follow you on social media, right? I love my dentist. I love all my healthcare practitioners, right? It's why I go to them. I am willing to do whatever they ask me, whether it's clinical, whether it's to help them. I'll certainly follow them. I wouldn't ask them to like and follow a specific post, but if I'm following, I follow my dentist, I engage with his stuff all the time. I think he's a great clinician and I appreciate what he does. I'm sure for many of you, your patients think the same exact way. They want to support you. They want to send more people your way. Just like if someone asks me, hey, do you have a good dentist? I'm sending him to the dentist that I go to. I'm sending him to the doctor that I go to. It's as easy as that. You could make, call to actions in your office, whether it's having signs. You could create a corner that has, a selfie station. You could create a sign that says, take a picture of your smile here. I've seen a lot of things within it. Something that I'm happy to talk to anyone about, what different call to actions you could have in your office. But it's as simple as making something illustrative in your office that says, hey, you should follow this office on social. It's definitely not hard. This goes back to the, what I just harped on about quality and quantity. I will say one of my friends just opened a small business and he's been asking me for help. And for him, he's a finance background guy. He is very much what I was just talking about that we deal with at work. They want more. They want to build. They want their following to grow. I would rather see him have 2 really great posts a month and then continuously have 2 really great posts a month than him do something 2-3 times a week just for the sake of it. People will tune it out, and you're just exhausting you. You're just exhausting your staff. The more important thing that you could do here is create consistency. And I think I have a slide on this later, but creating consistency of saying, hey, I'm going to post 2-3 times a month, or I'm going to post once a week, and getting used to that rather than saying, hey, what are we posting today? Or hey, what are we posting next week? And then 1 week having 5 posts, and then for 2 weeks having nothing. It's way more important to create the cadence so your followers understand how you post rather than just frantically trying to do things over and over again. And honestly, it adds to the stress levels of everyone, including you. So yes, I do have the slide on consistent use in here. So 3 tips that you could take from this to tie back to consistent use. The reason number 1 as to why it's so important is you need to keep your customers engaged, right? You can't create something today, not create something for months, and then expect your followers to re-engage you when they don't even have a feeling for how often you post, right? There's a reason you subscribe to a newspaper. There's a reason you subscribe to things. You get used to the cadence of how people communicate to you. If you had a team meeting once and then you have another team meeting for 3 months, your team's going to question when you're going to have another team meeting. Making that cadence, you have to think a little bit like a editor, where you have to say, okay, we're going to start posting once a week and we'll grow from there. If that, or maybe once a week is the right thing for you. But creating that consistency will help create that stickiness with your audience. 2 is what I was talking about in terms of having a social media champion. It's funny, Henry Schein, we actually love this term social media champion so much. We used to have our own Facebook group called Social Media Champions, which we ended up sunsetting a couple of years ago. But creating a social media champion in your office would be, if I'm thinking of a business from a business standpoint, would be the first step that I have is in terms of identifying someone in your office to say, you, Tim, you are going to own social media for our practice. Not saying we're not all going to have input, not saying we're not all going to help, but you will be the focal point. Social media is part of your goals. Social media is part of your compensation. Social media is part of how you should come into this office thinking of a day. Could be you, could be the practice owner, could be the dentist, could be the associate, whoever it comes naturally to. But if you don't have someone that's thinking about it, it's not going to get done, right? It's just not going to get done. So have that social media champion. First step towards having practiced social media. A little bit different if you're doing this for personal reasons, right? If you, Dr. Armstrong, are saying, hey, I really want to grow my personal social media, well, that has to be you. That, or hire your own social media person, which I would love to do for myself too. But it is, if you're trying to do it for your personal brand, you have to own it. And having that consistent use and being real with yourself to say, do I have time for this? Because you don't want to do what I told you my dentist did about an hour ago, and that is create pages, never use it. You look like you're out of business. People are questioning, do you still exist, right? Because hadn't it been for that referral from literally my best friend in life, I never would have gone to the practice to begin with. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that's thought that way. And then last is analyzing, right? So you will quickly understand, if you create a social media page, if you guys already have social media pages, it's not hard. Go in the analytics. You will see what resonated with your customers, with your patients. You could rate everything when you're going into these tools, when you go into Facebook or Instagram, you could get reports that say, show me my top engaged posts over the last, whatever timeline it is you want to see. You'll see what's resonated with your patients. Do more of that. That is not rocket science, right? We do the same thing at Shine. Every couple of months, we put out an engagement report to our dental team. We say, hey team, this is what's resonated with dentists across America. Let's do more of this. I promise there isn't much more to it. Just look at what's working and step and repeat and do that. Obviously, you want to try new things, you want to adapt, but you'll quickly know if it works or not. You will. So I'm going to dive into, we don't have that much time. And like I said, I'm happy to dive into this more, whether it's another session down the road, whether it's someone that wants to have one-on-one or a smaller group. But I just wanted to go through paid advertising and what this looks like. It is incredibly efficient for a small business to use social media to advertise. And like I said, I have helped a lot of friends lift social media campaigns for their small businesses. From a cost perspective standpoint, I'd be hard pressed to find something that I would say is more efficient for every dollar that you would spend, just because of how great the targeting is. Now, granted, I'm sure many of you heard over the last year or two, there has been a semi-war between Facebook and Apple in terms of what data gets shared and how privacy looks. It certainly is getting harder to market on digital platforms. It's not only social, because people are so cognizant of cookies. People are so cognizant of, hey, if I go to this website, what data am I giving? But no matter what, it takes 2 seconds to say, hey, I want to market to people 25 and above in a 5-mile radius of my office. That's never going to change, because one of the core things that you do when you put in Facebook is you put, where do you live? And you can't have a profile without Facebook knowing where you live. So from a local business standpoint, it is incredibly easy to target the people that live in your communities and your surrounding communities. But I just wanted to go through 3 of the most highly used terms for how you would advertise on social media. This will probably just be a taste of what you could learn, but it's really important because it's a first step into understanding how social media advertising works. So generally, when you run a social media ad, you're paying for one of these 3 things. It might be all 3 of these things, but generally you will say, hey, I want people to click on something. Hey, I want people to see something. Hey, I want to understand what's important to them. From a click-through rate, that would be how many people saw my piece of content and actually clicked through something, right? How many people engaged with it? How many people actually went to my website and took an action? From what we say is CPC, that's when you're saying, hey, Facebook, I'll pay you $1 or 50 cents for every time you get a patient of mine to click to my website, or I'll pay you X amount for you if you could get a patient of mine to do this or do that. That's some type of action. And then CPM, this is anyone that has any communications or marketing background, cost per 1,000 impressions is basically the gold standard of how advertising works. When people run ads on social media, when people run ads on television, when people run ads in newspapers, they're paying for CPM more than likely. And that is, you're paying X amount of dollars for 1,000 people to see your content, right? So CPM is, hey, Facebook, I will pay you $20 for every 1,000 potential patients to see this piece of, to see this post that I have. And for for dentists and small business owners, it's really important because it gives you an idea of how much you need to spend to reach how many potential patients, right? So if you want to say, hey, I live in an area, there's probably 50,000 people in a 5-10 mile radius. So you should be able to say, okay, I want to create a budget. I want to work on a budget. I want to put something together that says, I want to reach the 50,000 people around me, and I need to figure out how much I need to spend to get there. There's going to be so many variables, but spending some time in this, you will understand how much you would need to spend to reach how many of your patients or potential patients. Like I said, we could dive into this topic forever. I just wanted to give everyone a basis of what this actually looks like. So one thing that comes up a lot is Facebook listening. And this, I've done a lot of guest lectures at colleges. So guest lectures at colleges, I've done internal workshops at Shine, and I've obviously spoken to a bunch of societies and done different dental groups. This comes up almost every time. And I say no, and people never believe me, but I promise that Facebook doesn't need to listen to anything you're saying to understand exactly what you're thinking. And my argument there is to say, you do more without saying a word on your phone and computer than Facebook, Instagram, Google, I mean, all of them, than they ever need to do listening to you. So I give one anecdote, and I think I've told this to Anne-Marie, and it's one of my favorites. So my friend, one of my closest friends at Shine is, he leads our creative team. His wife is a realtor. She had just become a realtor when this story happened months earlier. I'll never forget, we were near his office on the 3rd floor at the Henry Schein headquarters. And he said, hey, by the way, his wife, Madi, he goes, Madi would love some advice as to how she could start her social media presence for her realty business. She wants to start picking up clients through social. So I said, yeah, of course, no problem. Next time I see her, I'll sit down and I'll walk through some basic steps she could do to start. Later that day, I get served an ad that says how to market your realty practice, or how to market your realty business. And I took a screenshot and I sent it to him, and he was like, see, they're listening. I could tell you exactly how that worked without the fact that they ever needed to listen. That is, you might not know, but when you use Facebook, when you use probably all social media tools, you are giving consent for them to understand where you are from a GPS standpoint. So that includes the fact that Facebook knew that Joe and I were standing next to each other, right? So they're assuming, hey, they're probably talking about life things. Well, guess what? They know that we're friends on Facebook. They know that Joe is married to Madi on Facebook. So they can make a safe assumption to say they've probably talked about something related to Madi's realty business. So these are the things that tie back to saying all the things that you do on social media come to a head. And I'm going to show you a slide within the next slide or two as to what this actually looks like. There is never a time where you're going to say something out loud of something that Facebook, Google likely doesn't already know about you. So that I just like to debunk that, because you'll start thinking about this as you do searches, as you see ads. There are actually ways that you could find out how advertisers found you now that privacy rights have opened up a little bit more. It's just an interesting debate, and one that I really believe they never actually need to hear a word from you. And that ties into this slide. So if we were together in a room, I would ask everyone that's attending what you think this is. And without a doubt, I get some hilarious responses as to what they think the slide is. So I wish I could get some feedback as to what you think this is. This is actually, Dr. Armstrong, do you think you have any idea what this is?
So are these things that someone searched on
So-
Google?
That's actually a really good guess. This is one page out of 150 pages of what Facebook thinks I'm interested in. And this is based off of things that were targeted to me, things that I've clicked on, things that I've shown interest in the past. So if you took a look at this, you would think that one, I'm a psycho, because you think I'm some type of doctor, dentist, nurse, save the elephants, pay-per-click guy. But it just shows you how much Facebook knows about you. When I tell you, I mean, I took this screenshot a while ago. This is one of hundreds of pages of data that Facebook has on me in terms of what it thinks I like, what it knows I've looked at in the past, and what it thinks I'm going to like in the future.
So where did you get this information?
So funny enough, when you're served an ad, right? So when you go on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see at the top right, there's that ... If you click on that and you say, why did I see this ad? You could dig a couple pages into there and Facebook will show you all the things that it thinks it knows about you. You could dig through pages of this to see, here are the ads that I've clicked on. Here are the ads that have been targeted to me and why. This has gotten a lot more transparent over the years. You're able to see the things you've clicked on. You're able to see the things that you've shown interest in, and you're also able to see some of the brands that are targeting you and why they're targeting you.
This might be scary.
It's not scary. I promise it's not scary. Like I said, I mean, when I took the screenshot, I hadn't looked for an apartment in years. I'm looking at some of the other things in here. I can't remember the last time I bought something from Lululemon. Nurse practitioner, I probably haven't shown interest in that since the days that I worked from Northwell. So the amount of data that they hoard on you is endless. And conversely, when you're running a business, when you're running ads, you get to use this data, right? So you get to say, hey, I want to market my dental practice and I want to target people in a 10-mile radius of here. I want them to be a mom. I want them to have interest in X, Y, and Z. I want them to, they even have, they'll have estimated wealth levels to say, hey, we're looking for this type of thing. The one thing Facebook has really gotten good at over the last couple of years, especially since the 2016 election, is making sure that there's no discrimination against any ads, right? They won't let you say you're not going to be able to ever target based off of race. You're not going to ever be able to target based off of things that are really, really personal to someone. But you could target someone that says, hey, I want to target someone that follows the ADA or has shown interest in dentistry. I want to target someone that went to dental school. You could spend hours building ads that are catered to what's important to you. And this is the reason why. Like I said, one of 150 pages, I'm sure I'm not the only one. So with that, this is end of my formal presentation. Wanted to end with this, and this is a sales funnel that we use, something that I've used over the years. The actual marketing teams at Shine use this across the board. It's nothing that's proprietary to Shine. It is something that many marketers use all over, and this is the sales funnel, and this is where I want you to remember. So the bottom of the funnel, that narrow tip, would be the equivalent of a patient walking into the door for you, right? So I want you to keep in mind that social is likely not going to be the last touch point between a patient seeing you on social media and then making an appointment to come to your practice, because there's a lot of touch points, right? For you, it's probably gonna for a dentist, it's probably gonna look a little bit different than this. You're likely not gonna have many large email campaigns. You might not have affiliate marketing, which is like if we're running an ad in a trade magazine or outside. But you might run Google ads, right? You might run paid search ads. You might have email campaigns. Social media is going to likely often be the first touch point between you and a new patient. I'm really speaking toward new patients here. For returning patients, for the patients that are huge fans of you, that love your practice, it's going to be more about retention keeping you on their mind for the 6 months that you don't see them. But for new patients, just keep in mind when you're running ads, you shouldn't be creating a strategy that says, hey, I want someone to see my social media ad, and that's how many people I should have, that's how many new patients I should have this week. It's unrealistic. You will create a funnel of people that say, hey, you're going to add some followers, you're going to have more people look at reviews, you're going to have more people ask people for referrals to your practice, but it's unlikely that someone's going to see your social media post, whether it's you as Dr. Armstrong or Dr. Armstrong as her practice, however, whatever way is more important to you, or it might be both. But it's unlikely that someone stumbles on your social media ad and in one step picks up the phone to make an appointment or clicks to make an appointment. Just want to set realistic expectations especially when you're creating a social media strategy from scratch. Many business owners make this mistake of saying, okay, I ran social media ads. How did that relate to us right now? Same thing at Shine. Think about how you buy your equipment. Think about how you buy your merchandise for your practice. We as Henry Schein don't expect you to see a social media ad and make a huge order on your couch while you're surfing Facebook. There are many steps in between. Social media is usually one of the entry touch points to that. So with that, I hope that was a good overview, and I'm more than happy to answer some of the other questions that have either lingered or presented to itself now. I just can't see them, Dr. Armstrong.
Sure. So let's go back to this question.
Yep.
What are the 2 best ways to encourage patients to follow a dental practice Facebook page?
I'm just gonna stop sharing. So I would say one is create call to actions within your practice, right? There's no reason why you shouldn't have signage. There's no reason why, imagining everyone has space to have a sign that would say, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, take a selfie here, take a picture here. That is the easiest thing to do. I've gone in many practices where you see people that just like, hey, you put a sign in the lobby, you put a sign somewhere that says, follow us. And sometimes I'll even see dentists that run raffles and prizes. People that'll say, hey, if we hit 5,000 followers, if we hit 10,000 followers, we're going to give away an Align case, right? We're going to give away something.
That's a great idea.
It's really not hard, right? You just say, we're going to do something. We try to keep people engaged. And you could just do that in the practice. And it's as easy as the hygienist bringing it up. Oh, you guys should take a picture. Your teeth look great. We just cleaned them. Take a picture. At the same time, not to stereotype, a lot of the young patients will just do it naturally. I've seen plenty of kids come in and say, hey, I want to take a selfie. Look up the hashtag dental selfie. You will see young patients in chairs, still in the chair, taking selfies of their newly cleaned teeth. It's as easy as connecting one to the other, making sure that they're doing in your practice. You can have a call to action to tag your practice, and there's just so much there. Having that conversation between your hygienist, between your dentist, there's no shame in asking the patient to actually do it. Having that call to action in the practice helps even more. The other way that I would say is run simple advertising, right? So you could run ads for as cheap as $5 a day, or even $5 a day, and do it just for a couple of days, where you could target people within your community. You could target your patients to follow your page. But like I said, following the page is great. Creating engaging content is more important. If I was a practice owner, I certainly would start with making call to actions within the office. It's completely free outside of creating maybe some signage.
So then let's go back to YouTube.
Yep.
How do you think we could best use YouTube? And the question actually came from someone asking about a pediatric dental practice, but for any dental practice.
Yep. So pediatric dentistry aside, if I was a practice owner, it would be building my niche, right? So if anyone knows who Dr. Pimple Popper is, she's a dermatologist.
Mm-hmm.
Huge following, tens of millions of followers, obviously has her own reality show now, but she built a niche in that she made gross videos of her popping pimples, right? And people love to follow that. If I was a pediatric dentist, the number one thing that I would do if I wanted to build a YouTube following is say, what are the top questions that parents ask or kids ask about going to the dentist, and make videos that answer that. Because what you're doing there is you're answering a Google search, right? So if someone says, hey, my child is coming in for a dental visit for the first time ever, what should I expect? I would create a video that explains your child's first dental visit, what to expect, right? You could go on YouTube, see what people are searching. You could go on Google, see what people are searching in terms of pediatric dentists. Find out what's important to the parent, find out what's important to the young patient, and answer those questions. Then you could become the expert. Now, I hope there's not 10, 15 pediatric dentists on this call that are going to go run and compete with each other after this. But what you could do is answer those questions, right? And that's an easy way to garner followers. At the same time, you have to keep in mind that's going to create content that is very broad, right? So you have to understand that if you do that, you're going to get people from across the country that may never be your patient looking at the video. As long as you understand that, that's fine. But it will help a lot in terms of your own credibility. And people, I mean, how many chiropractors and dermatologists have I seen that have become famous on social media because they answer these questions? And it's like, oh man, I kind of want to go to Texas just to go to this doctor.
Right.
So it's funny, you'll notice that. But that would be my number one answer for YouTube, is answer with your expertise the questions that people are asking on Google.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Well, Tim, we have thoroughly enjoyed your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
And I am sure that there were other questions. So we will definitely make sure that our audience has your contact information. If someone would like to contact you, with personal questions, we will make that available.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. So we would love to thank Henry Schein for sponsoring our event this evening, and Mr. Tim Vasilakos. We thoroughly enjoyed his presentation. So again, Henry Schein, thank you so much.